Hey everyone, it's Carrie Hamilton here from The Fitness Girl, and today I'm going to try my best to um, make understanding macronutrients and more importantly protein for your needs for fat loss. So to start, let's first explain. I had a client actually, or one of the girls in boot camp, who said that, oh, I know that I have to increase my protein because it's the most important macronutrient. And the truth is, it's not the most important, it's just as important. The problem is we tend to live in a society or world that emphasizes carbohydrates, and then to our detriment, which explains why we have so much more girth around the midsection, because our diets are very high in carbohydrates and not as high in protein or in fats. So those are the three. First of all, those are the three macronutrients. You got protein, carbohydrates, and fat. You kind of have to look at it as how your body responds to these three macronutrients, not necessarily how you have to eliminate one or the other. A lot of diets concentrate on eliminating carbs entirely, and the fact of the matter is you need carbs. Your body needs carbs. It's one of its energy sources to live. The problem is, we tend to focus on the carbs that are not so good for you, like the rice, the brown rice, breads, grains. And that's the thing too. Also, you have diets that say, oh, you can have grains as long as you have grains or whole wheats. And the problem with grains or whole wheats is that they're actually really high in carbohydrates. So you can have a vegetarian diet, but if you have a lot of grains, then you also have a lot of carbohydrates. And if you have a lot of carbohydrates, you're nullifying your fat loss efforts altogether. And the same thing, like fat is kind of neutral in the sense that if you have a higher carbohydrate in terms of vegetables that are also high, super high in carbohydrates, but what happens is they help clean out your liver of fat so that if you have fat, you can absorb protein better. It's kind of weird. I hope that kind of makes sense. But again, it's not that you need to take out fat and take out carbohydrates. You have to diminish your carbohydrates and increase your protein. And the same thing, like animal protein is it's okay for protein breakdown or protein component. It's not the best. It's not super high in protein, but it is really high in fat. So if you have animal protein with carbohydrate vegetable, it'll nullify the fat intake in the protein, which is the animal. Does that make sense? So that all being said, some of the foods that are high in protein, low in carbohydrates or no carbohydrates, and negligible in fats are fish. Fish is super high in protein content. It's about 93%. Some fish, again, you have to kind of take things with a grain of salt. So it's not all fish, but cod, for instance, is about 70 or it's actually 93% protein content. And there are zero carbs in cod. And again, it's negligible, super negligible in fat. It's like literally 7% of fat. So it's nothing. It's actually really good. So if you could have a diet that is more on the seafood side, high in vegetables, made with coconut oil, then you'd have a pretty good balanced diet. The problem is, if you're following the food guide that says have 7 or 8 servings of grains, I believe, as it stands today, the problem is our bodies are already out of balance, so that you're just increasing your imbalanced state, basically. Another great food is kale. Kale has protein. Who knew? It's about 16% protein content. It also has 72% carbs, but the carb ratio, even though it's a super high amount of carbohydrates, it's fibrous carbs, so fibrous carbs. So what will happen is it breaks down. It's slower to break down. It doesn't spike your insulin like grains do right away, which turns into sugar, which stores on your body as fat. So this is a really good food breakdown. So you got your kale, And then again, it has a little bit of fat, but it's good fat. It's the omega-3 fats. It's the fats that help with digestion. It's low on the glycemic index, so it's a really good source of protein and carbohydrate. So I hope that kind of makes sense with the macronutrient breakdown. Now, I'm also going to include a calculator, protein calculator here, so that you can click on it and it asks for your weight, your height, your activity level, and then it'll give you a breakdown of what your what your protein amount should be for the day. Now, even myself, I have a really hard time getting my daily protein amounts in. And if you don't get your protein amounts in, what happens is it slows down the fat burning effect. Protein is it's a macronutrient that promotes satiety, so it helps you feel full for longer. And it just triggers proteins. Just the macronutrient that triggers the fat burning hormone. So the more protein you have, I shouldn't say the more protein you have, but the better quality of protein that you have, the faster it'll help you burn fat, which is what you want. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe the amount should be about 0.8 grams per body weight. I just like to make it easy. I like things that are easy and that makes sense. And so I just rounded up to a straight 1 gram per body weight, knowing already that most people don't get that anyway. So, I mean, if you weigh 130, 140, you're looking at 130 grams a day of protein, and most people get far under that. Maybe they're lucky if they get half of that. And again, it's a good protein source. So I like to use whey protein. My first meal, I do intermittent fasting, so my first meal is usually a protein shake or a smoothie, and that's about 25 grams per scoop. So I'll add 1 scoop and I'll have it with spinach or kale, a little bit of fruit. The same thing, fruit is really high in sugar, so you want to, the same thing, if you're going to have it, try to aim for the fruits that are low on that glycemic index, like an apple or strawberries, berries. Tend to be a little bit lower. So you want to trigger your fat burning hormones right away. And so I'll end up having a protein shake in the morning. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like it and it's grainy and da-da-da-da. I mean, it's 2017. Come on, guys. Like, there are a million different kinds of proteins out there. And the truth of the matter is that every year they get better tasting, I mean, you could get protein shakes. I have one that tastes like vanilla cake. There is absolutely no excuse. You mix it with water, so you don't have the additional calories, and then just go to town. And so that's really all I have to say about protein in that sense. So again, it's not that you should follow my guideline, which again is I tend to go the 1 just because it's easier, 1 gram per body weight. But as long as you get close to or close enough in the day, like I said, it's going to be really hard to do. I mean, eggs only have about 1 large egg has about 6 grams of protein, just to give you an example. So, and 6 ounces of chicken is something like, I think it's like 23 grams. So even at that, you're already looking at 6 ounces of chicken, 1 egg, and you're still only at like 30 grams. That's 1 serving. So, like I said, I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.